Welcome to Coffee with Democrats, a sensible platform for progressive conversations. Coffee with Democrats is a grassroots movement dedicated to hearing from Democrats, candidates, legislators, and friends from all political backgrounds who want great conversations. Coffee with Democrats is committed to increase Democrat voter registration and Democrat voter turnout by making voting more exciting and meaningful. And now here's your host of Coffee with Democrats, Kevin Dawson.
Good morning. Good morning. Today on Coffee with Democrats, we have Elizabeth Foreman. Elizabeth Foreman is running for the Senate District 15 for Oklahoma State Senate. So good morning and welcome with us, Elizabeth. It's good to have you on Coffee with Democrats.
Morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you on to talk about your candidacy and the platform that you're going to run on. Before we get too involved here and we dive into some biographical questions and, just some stuff to let people get to know you better. We got some really, really important stuff that we got to talk about. And that's Coffee with Democrats. We have coffee together. And so we got to talk a little bit about what your favorite beverage of choice is in the morning, whether it be coffee or coffee substitute. So this is earth-shaking stuff we got to talk about.
This is the deal breaker.
Yes.
I'm afraid it's going to be a deal breaker for some people. I'm not the biggest coffee drinker.
Sure.
I think it's because growing up, my mom drank a lot of Cafe Vienna, and there's the smell of it. I don't know. Kind of put me off to it, but if I do drink coffee, it has to be very sugary and flavored in a way that I don't know I'm drinking coffee. So
Right.
it starts during the holidays. They have a sugar cookie,
Right.
milk latte. So I'll get that, or a cold brew, vanilla, sweet cream, cold brew. But other than that, that's it. So my actual beverage of choice, and it's my poison, is Dr. Pepper. But I've moved to Dr. Pepper Zero. So when I'm looking for my caffeine boost, I grab a Dr. Pepper Zero and I take my vitamins with that. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, good. So I'll just go quickly here. You and I are exactly the same when it comes to coffee. I hate the taste of black coffee. I have to have something that takes the place of it. So my favorite coffee is McDonald's drive-through, and that's from when I was working before I retired. I was traveling all over the United States, and the one thing that's constant, no matter where you go, there's generally a McDonald's. So early in the morning, I'd go through McDonald's drive-through. I would get a coffee with 5 sugars and 5 creamers, and their McCafe coffee. It just, to me, it's very smooth, but I got the effects of coffee without tasting the coffee. So, and then of course the Zero. Let me see if it's Coke Zero, but I'm with you on having a caffeinated drink every once in a while during the day. And my throat's kind of crackly this morning, so I thought maybe I better have something handy just in case it started to act up. But Steve, you want to tell us just a little bit about your favorite morning drink? I think Steve was gone. We lost him. Well,
black coffee.
Pardon?
So offended that we don't like black coffee.
Well, right. Yeah, I know he has a I think it's a cappuccino machine maybe, or a espresso. Maybe that's what it is. I think he drinks black espresso very hard, very hardcore. I can't do it. But so let's dive in here a little bit. And I've got some information here that I want to share with all of the listeners. That Elizabeth, you are a devoted mother. You're a proven leader. Again, we're speaking with Elizabeth Foreman, candidate for State Senate District 15. She comes with experience in public administration, law enforcement, public education, and healthcare. Elizabeth brings over a decade of expertise in private and public sector budgeting. Elizabeth grew up in Noble, which is just south of Norman. where her family still resides, and she graduated from Noble High School in 2001. At the University of Oklahoma, she earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in public administration. We share the OU alumni, so Boomer. She finished her doctorate, or she is finishing her doctorate in administration and leadership at Southern Nazarene University and teaches part-time at Oklahoma City Community College. So that is quite a bit for a very young person compared to me, I should say. I don't want to disparage, what was it that during one of the candidacies, I don't want to disparage your youth, but you do have a lot of experience. So thank you for being on Coffee with Democrats.
Absolutely. My background recently, I kind of gave a talk in sort of a history, and it all sounds very good on paper, and it is, a lot of accomplishments, but I was not a traditional student. So I graduated high school. My father passed away when I was 12, right before I was 13. So my family, we're the only family in Oklahoma. We're not originally from Oklahoma. And so at that time, my mom went back to school when she was 45 years old, and she graduated with her nursing degree when she was 50, when I graduated high school. And life and experience, I wanted to get out and be on my own. So I waited a couple of years to go to school. I just worked, and then I was working and going to school. So it took a little bit of time to get that accomplished. So I was 28 when I got my bachelor's. And because of the experiences that I had that I could talk about, at a later time, I studied chemistry. I thought I wanted to be a medical doctor.
Sure.
And it turned out that's not what I wanted. I really enjoyed the degree. I really enjoy science. I think what makes me very good with policy is that kind of math and science mentality. Here's a problem, let's find a solution.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that. But during that time of, working and going to school, I worked in banking and finance, and then I worked for the state in purchasing. And then I wound up doing finance at the police department at the Health Sciences Center in Oklahoma City. And I was there for almost a decade doing that. And it was very interesting experience to me working there. I had never even touched a gun. I never been around a gun. I never seen anything like that. So I learned a lot, opened my eyes to a lot of things, understood a lot more processes than I did. And, at the same time, in other areas of my life, I was feeling a call towards public service. And so I, served on some boards and commissions with the city in Norman. I was on the Historic District Commission for the city. I chaired that. I was on the editorial board with the Norman Transcripts. And then the time just became right to pull the trigger and run for city council. So I filed in December of 19, and I knew that I wanted to move in that direction of policy and all of that. But a degree in chemistry and being a finance director, you just can't segue into that. So I knew I needed either experience as an elected official or education. So
Right.
that's when I back to OU, I knew I could get into grad school. Did not know if you would win an election, right? That's 50-50. And so started campaigning in February of 2020. I went into a runoff with the current incumbent for the Ward 6 seats. And then COVID happens and all those things. George Floyd, the city of Norman reduced the police budget in June of 2020. And then 2 weeks later was my runoff election date. And I won. And then a week later, I was sworn in, and I came in when everything was on fire.
Right.
So I'm working full time. I'm dealing with a city that's just crumbling beneath itself. And I'm starting grad school, and I'm starting my master's in public administration. And I'm a single mom. So it was a lot to take on, and going through that and learning a lot and speaking with the people. I thought I was going to get into this, and I had the fortitude and the grit, to be a good elected official, because I'm not in it as a vanity campaign. I'm not trying to bolster myself. I'm trying to learn and understand and make good policy decisions and understand the process and not just want to be the face of everything. If I didn't have to be the face, that would be fine too.
Sure.
But as I continued on with my master's program, I did my capstone project. And in the course of that, I came across a theory, agenda setting theory, and it was sort of media and public opinion influence on policy. And I just couldn't let it go. I just loved it so much, but it wasn't what I was writing about, but I just wanted to go back to it. And unfortunately, OU wouldn't let me work full time. So I had to go to Southern Nazarene to get my doctorate. And so that's actually what I'm writing about. And I actually found the theorist behind it, and I got to meet with him. He's at, a college in Texas we won't name, but I still love talking to him, and that was amazing. And so through the last 3.5 years that I've been in school and pursuing this education and the experience, I just felt like, no, I never thought I would go much further than, city council, that type of thing. But I really feel led to guiding people back to common sense and
Sure.
common ground. And so those 2 weeks between, what's quote unquote defunding the police and Norman to my election, it very immediately became, well, the incumbent is the only Republican and she's a Democrat. So we became very quickly partisan in those 2 weeks leading up to it. And I just said, well, I work at a police department, let's stop and let's not, put paid to something that you don't know anything about. Let's have these conversations. And so I feel what sort of separated me from the rest of my council was that I would take the time to talk to people, and I never tried to play partisan. I never emotionally knee-jerk reacted to things, even very early on before some other people won next year. I've always been a believer that cooler heads prevail.
Right.
So I've always tried to show that. So my first year of council, I always said, I was serving a sentence because it was really difficult and really hard. But then I was able to sort of break through sort of this ideas of what people had, thought about me and who I was, and really saw that I tried to make sound judgments when I cast votes, that I wasn't just, playing in a partisan politics, which I'll get to, which is very important to me with this Senate election, and that I tried to make the best decision holistically. And sometimes that went with my party, even though it's not partisan, sometimes it was not with. And so I think people were able to pick up on that. So in my reelection, my ward is about 70% Republican. So if every Democrat went out and voted for me, I still would not win. And the number of votes that I got, almost 2,500, just me, not with my opponents counted, just me, is more than most wards total combined. So my ward really turns out and they vote. And so many Republicans said, I support you because you are fair-minded and you're reasonable and you don't get upset and you don't have these visceral reactions to things. And so that really resonated with them. And I just feel like the direction that the state is going and how hard we're leaning into partisan politics, because when you only have this political ideology that you're subscribing to, you're not looking at the candidate. So you're going to put in a Brian Walters, right? You're going to put in people who are unqualified and don't understand. So, really step back and look at the candidate. And I really feel that in this district, which we can talk more about in a minute, that I really have, a very good chance at winning the seats. When we moved to Oklahoma, I lived in Noble, which is encompassed in Senate District 15. The voter universe are people that I went to high school with and people who've known me for a very long time, 25 plus years, who know my values and principles, who have followed me on city council, and who agree with things that I say. And then in Norman, I would never say I'm the most liked council member. I like to say I'm one of the, least disliked council members because they don't want to like us. But I don't think I've been very problematic, and I think I've been fair, and people see that and they'll vote for me because I've maintained my composure during really, really difficult times, and I've been transparent and very honest. And so knowing how my council tenure went and my education and my experience and just this drive towards it, I feel like slowly we can start to chip away and center and hone back into common sense.
Excellent. You know,
Sorry.
yeah, I appreciate, that the idea is that the supermajority, that we have in the state of Oklahoma, it's our way or the highway attitude. And there's a lot of people in Oklahoma who do not support the extremist agenda of, the most extreme people like Dom or some of the others who are in the legislature and are part of the Republican MAGA movement in here in Oklahoma. Uh, we're just briefly, I have this thought about 2020. We saw a movement in Norman called Unite Norman, and again, that was the extremist view that took place. Were you targeted by that group, or were you spared?
Oh, absolutely. Did not matter that I worked at a police department, right? You would think that would have shielded me from some of it. It did not matter. I
Right,
was the things that they would say, oh, Bria and I are best friends. I'm like, I've met her 5 times. I don't think that makes us close. That sort of thing. My trash cans would get knocked over. It wasn't as bad for me as it was for Councilmember, Bierman, Wilson, and Patron. They antagonized online too. They liked to push back, and so that was really difficult. The men on council obviously did not have these issues. It was just targeted to the woman. But with me, it was, oh, well, she's just going to say whatever. She's a liar. She's this, she's that, and anything they could come up with. And so the first budget meeting that we had after that, Rashar and Kelly had just won their council elections and they were waiting in the wings to be sworn in. And they filled the chambers, and I was wanting money for sidewalks. I wanted to dedicate a specific amount of money to each ward so they could do like a sidewalk project or put in a basketball court, or something in the neighborhoods. And it was just one after the other of them telling me that that was like Marxism, that was redistribution of wealth, that was communism, that was the most radical thing they'd ever heard. And so I coined the phrase accidentally when I was talking about it on the dais after they had all made their comments, like, oh, you could call it radical sidewalks if you want. And so that kind of got picked up on. And someone made me a t-shirt that said radical sidewalks. But yeah, it was with me, they didn't have much material, but they would try
sure,
to, but seeing how it led to some failed marriages of people I served on council with. A lot of
sure.
people, relationships. Councilmember Coleman is in the middle of his 11th year right now. So he was on long before that happened, and we've discussed it, and he's, it was never like this before. Like, this has cost me my job, this cost me relationships, this cost me friendships, the way that this divide sort of happened. So it's definitely a unique experience. But yeah, I was pretty targeted on the faux front. And then I did leave my job when I knew that I wanted to run for a state office. I was working again for the University of Oklahoma. You can't run for partisan office while working for a state entity. So I left, and now I'm at a nonprofit that helps healthcare expansion for the uninsured, the poor, rural communities in the state of Oklahoma. So really great work, really love what I do. But knowing that, so I could leave that. But I left the police department, and then that they tried to really run with that. Like, oh, see, she doesn't care about the police. And I was like, no, just
Right.
wait. I'm going to be running for something else. So
So, you've done a really good job of explaining your biographical background, your college, the Ward 6 council member for the city of Norman. You've really explained that really well. Um, we need to talk about it. We're down to 3 more questions. The first one is to talk about the term of Senator Stanrich in his tenure and some of the failures that he had. And I pulled up his website, or excuse me, not his website, but I pulled up his Just Facts Vote Smart um, uh, record, and he votes against Oklahomans almost consistently. He is ultra MAGA, everything, like you said, it's all about Marxism, communism. He votes against Oklahomans on a regular basis. He votes against public education. However, the only one thing that I saw in here that kind of set me back was he did vote to increase annual teacher pay. But other than that, he votes to prohibit people from walking in rights of way and giving the right to somebody else to run them over. Um, you know, he prohibits gender transition procedures. He prohibits, but he also has a real bad history of not voting, but then talking smack about what he didn't vote on as if he voted for or against it. So do you have some comments about the record that he had and kind of compare that with your platform and what you think the Oklahomans really need and deserve as a senator?
Absolutely. So when I won city council, that was when I was first introduced to him in a real way. His kids went to the school my daughter went to. He helped co-author the voucher program,
Sure.
which is absolutely disastrous. I believe 65% of people who applied for the voucher make over $150,000. So there's that, and I pulled my daughter from that school. She's now in Norman Public Schools because of the disastrous way that it's been handled. But I can speak to that for a long time. So the fact that he would want to take money from public education should be a very terrifying thing for most people. I looked into Rob Sandridge prior to my real knowledge of him in 20 and since then, and it's truly terrifying. I could talk about it till I'm blue in the face, but I think the biggest thing that makes him the most dangerous, and thank goodness we only have one more session with him, is that he has just nosedived deep into this extreme partisan rhetoric. It is just absolutely manufactured, you know, crises. He's trying to find solutions to problems that do not exist.
True.
And when you veer that hard into extremism, the only way that you can set yourself apart is to try to one up and then try to one up and one up. And so then you start creating all of these extremist policies, like you're throwing noodles against a wall, seeing what sticks, and then trying to get people behind. Ryan Walters and his, oh, we got to protect the children. Let's have a special, state board meeting. Let's do all these things. Okay, yeah, everybody's concerned about children's welfare. Nobody wants predators. Absolutely understand that. Got you. But the crumbling infrastructure, the lack of progressive education, the defunding, let's talk about actual defunding, the defunding of education, and appointing people out of state to select library books who
Right.
bring extremist podcasts and platform doing these things. Okay, well, let's hold a special session to make sure kids don't get attacked by predators. Okay, not mutually exclusive from the failings that we see in education, right? So when you have Rob Sandridge who tried to present these policies like there's an immediate fire, and if we don't take care of these things and shut these things down, the libs are going to take over, or this is going to happen, and all of these things, and it's not. It's just manufactured chaos,
Right.
not real, not in reality. And so that becomes really dangerous because then, like you said, we're creating policies and doing things that do not help Oklahomans. No one in Oklahoma wants 99% of these things that are happening that they're presenting. It's not helpful to them. It doesn't help our children. It doesn't help our elderly. It doesn't help our disabled. It helps absolutely no one. But people will vote for them because they are buying into the hysteria of this far right extremism. So when I am talking to people as a council member, I've got receipts. Okay. You don't want some liberal. Okay. Well, that's fine. You want someone with common sense? That's me. I'm your person. And I have been, and you've seen it. Let's talk about these things. And let's actually break down, and let's not talk blue versus red, Democrats versus Republican. Let's actually talk about policies that are in place, right? You don't like these things, but you cannot support them just because they're a Republican. If
Right.
you had a place, then this is actually what could happen. And I'll show people statistics as I've been talking to people. A lot of people have been very curious about my run who actually live in Noble. and they tend to be a little independent, but maybe a little right. And I will show them, back in 2008, the Senate was 50-50 split, right? Still majority House Republican. But when we were there, we were 17th in the nation for education. When we had fair and balanced ideas, and we weren't just diving headfirst into a fire of partisan rhetoric and nonsense, quite honestly, we did better. We thrived better. We got things done. Ever since Mary Fallon took office, it has just been downhill, downhill, downhill since then. So the biggest failure of Rob Standridge is that he took the seat and the responsibility. When we get elected and sworn in, I didn't get a crown. I got responsibility. What he did was his little vanity position decided to puff up his partisanship and whip up a lot of trouble and chaos for no reason and create a lot of bad policies that hurt a lot of Oklahomans. We are a welfare state. We get more than we pay in, but we want to pretend like we're not. And we want to kick those who are down and just create policy to smoke and mirrors everybody and distract them so we don't come back to common sense.
So one of the statements that I like to say about Rod Standridge is he is coming in line with MAGA, and MAGA wants to control the people, where Democrats want to allow the people to thrive and to grow. And that's kind of the biggest difference between Democrats and Republican MAGAs at this point, is the absolute control over people that the MAGA movement is calling for. And you really you dove into my next question. You kind of stole my thunder away from me on my next question. So that you really brought back to why did you want to run, and you really stated that very clearly on why you wanted to run. And I wanted to, before we move on to our last question that I have, I wanted to see if Steve had some questions and some commentary that he wanted to share with you.
Good morning, Elizabeth, and great to have you on. And Kevin takes the lead on these things, and he gives me, I think, maybe 20 seconds to ask the question and get a response. So I'm just fine. I'm fine with this. This is something he's taken on, and he's made it into something that we actually didn't imagine, I think, when we started on this. So it's all good. So impressed with your whole approach to being an elected official and to seeking this position. I wondered if you could talk, and maybe Kevin, both of you could talk about this district. So I'm in Osage County. I'm way north, and I'm glad to listen in on this, and I'll be glad to make a contribution personally to your campaign here, which we want to make sure that people know where to go to do that before this ends. But what's this number 15 district like? Is it literally encircled now by the district number 16? I'm looking at a map. That's just weird looking. And what are the voters like? I see that Standridge, the last candidate, competition he had was from an Alex Scott a few years ago, and it's the kind of the typical 60-40 result that we see over and over and over in Oklahoma. And I wonder if you could just share some thoughts about, to both of you actually, about how this can be, at least where we can get to 51%, what's the road to doing so?
So Alex Scott, considering that it was about a 60-40, is almost miraculous, quite honestly. She was the one who presented the defunding the police amendment. So she had a huge target on her. So even the more progressive conservatives and conservative liberals went against her on that one. So that was unfortunate. And then looking at the field for the governor's race, Joy Hoffmeister actually won the district over Kevin Stitt. So that's very, very positive. So yes, it's core Norman. Sort of think about OU campus, the downtown Norman area, and then everything around outside of that, out to Lake Thunderbird, to Little Axe. I'm pointing because I can see a map in my head. What I do, sorry. And nobody can see the map in my head, but I think my arms up. And then it does go into Noble a bit. And so one thing that's very unique about this district that is also very personal to me, apart from growing up in Noble, attending Noble High School, yes, the most gerrymandered district in the state.
So
But
I'm sharing on the screen right now. I think people can see the map. I hope you can actually see it. But Senate District 16 is Senator Mary Boren, her district. And just like Elizabeth said, it is core Norman. It's basically the primary city limits of Norman. And the district that Elizabeth is running extends all the way up to the Oklahoma-Cleveland County border, all the way to the east to the Pottawatomie County border, and then goes down to about Slaughterville, kind of in the Slaughterville, almost to Purcell, almost to Lexington. It stops short of Lexington, and then back up the river, back up to the northwest. And then there's Senate District 24 and 45 that take up the kind of those areas in the northwest corner of the county. But Elizabeth is running for the largest Senate district for Cleveland County. So I will stop that share and let Elizabeth get back to explaining more about what she was saying.
terribly gerrymandered districts. Yeah, so the district is, I feel confident I can carry Norman. I have a history with Norman. Noble, the more rural you get, I would have to work very hard in that area. Work hard altogether, right? No matter what. But my mother still lives in Noble, and the turnpike is slated to take out her home. And so one thing that sort of sets me apart from my opponents on the other side right now is nobody's talking about the turnpike.
Right.
Because they're not hard for the turnpike. There's a lot of mixed feelings about turnpikes, good, bad, indifferent. This turnpike, the east, west, and north south extension, my mom would be, her home, she's a 72-year-old widow, her home would be taken out by the north south extension. It will displace 5% of the Noble population, 3,000 homes altogether. Nothing is worth that. So 5% of the Noble population. So it's unique that I'm so personally vested within this district. These are my people, this is my community, and that's been my experience my whole life. So good people in 15, I believe it was blue up until 2000, and then the gerrymandering, sort of began. But it will be an interesting one. But it's inspiring to know that Joy did win Senate 15.
Okay, and are you expecting primary competition at all? No, okay. And then who is the likely Republican candidate?
So there's 3, I would say, front runners. Tommy Harrell, I do not personally know. I know he's in oil and gas. Kelly Lynn, who was a council member that I served with. He did not, ironically, so I would be on the east side of that district. He was on the west side of that district, and he did not win a re-election. So I think, the constituents already told him we're good now. So I don't think he'll make it through the primary, but he's actively campaigning. And then Rob Standridge's wife, Lisa, has announced she's campaigning.
So to get back just a little bit more to what Elizabeth was talking about at the turnpike extension, which would come down through the eastern half of her district, would basically come down through the 120th Road Avenue on the southeast side of Oklahoma City, down through Lake Thunderbird, and cut right into Noble. The displacement just in Noble is astounding, but when you look at what it's going to displace throughout the entire district, we still have signs, and I go out and ride the motorcycle and drive cars up on the eastern half, and almost every community in every house out there in the county along that route has signs that say ditch the turnpike or something of that nature. So that's very fresh in people's mind, and people in Cleveland County understand and know very well that if they elect a Republican to that seat, they are going to lose their property to the turnpike because those people, just like I stated in a tweet not too long ago, I talked about Kevin Stitt. Kevin Stitt was personally invested in making sure that that extension took place. It was going to create jobs for Oklahoma County and Cleveland County, and he wanted to have that put in place. So he was personally invested, and I said at that point, the Republicans will just give in to Kevin Stitt and give him everything he wants. I need to back away and let Elizabeth talk about what her feelings are about that more than me.
Well, to that point, he did not win governor because of it.
Right.
And it's very, very personal to these people. And the now Ward 5 council member, he was, and then wasn't, now again, the Pike Off OTA. So it was their group that got it stopped, that took it to the state Supreme Court, and it put pause. And so now they're doing, their impact studies and all of these things. And so they're biding their time. But he sits right next to me. He is the Ward 5 council member, and I have his full support in this. And so he having that connection, and then my mother, my own personal connection. This is the house I grew up in Noble, right? That is very helpful, and that I have found crosses party lines.
Yes.
They will back you until you say you're going to take their property and their home, and then it changes. And unfortunately, the other side does not seem to find value in these people being vested in their homes for decades and decades and decades and wanting to leave a legacy to their family and their property. So horrible, horrible circumstances. Hopefully we can keep that from happening. But if it goes the other way, then they'll hand it over.
Right. That's exactly true. If a Republican is voted in to this seat to replace Standridge was already supportive of this. He wanted to have the turnpike. He made that perfectly clear until the outcry came out, and then he became a sheep and just kind of shrank away. But whoever takes that place now, they will tell the people in Cleveland County that they don't want it, but then they'll turn right around and they'll vote for it. That's exactly what they'll do. They'll stick to the party line and they will vote for it. We need to have a voice in Cleveland County who's going to stand up to the governor and say, no, this is not acceptable. And we are not going to do this. And I think having a pair of very strong senators and to say this in the most positive way I can say it, two ladies, Mary Bourne and Elizabeth Foreman, as the two senators for Cleveland County, could really, they could be the bulwark for Cleveland County and prevent the turnpike from coming to Cleveland County. So that's my opinion. And I'm gonna say it again. The reason we have Coffee with Democrats is so that we can inspire people to get out and register to vote, and we inspire people to vote for Democrats because Democrats will make a difference, and Democrats will make sure that we do the bidding of the people, not the rich and famous, but we do the bidding of the people, and that's exactly what Elizabeth and Mary do. So.
I got a question then, Kevin.
Sure.
Another one for Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, since you're not going to have any primary competition, is this that seems to open a door for Mary if she chooses to really, get involved with your campaign and to help support you. And I wonder if you've already had some discussions with that. Mary's been a friend of Coffee with Democrats. She's actually co-hosted I think well over a year ago, and sounds like that'd be a great partnership, if you will.
Yeah, I have met with them, and then the House legislators, your Jacob Rosecrans, Annie Menz, and your Deck. And then Senator Julia Kurt in Oklahoma City, the Senate PAC, I've met with them, met with Senator Hicks, Leader Munson, and just a lot of people sort of reaching out. They're sort of keeping it where I don't have to do a primary, right? So we can just get all in. I'm the most electable, option for the district. in all honesty. So yeah, they've been very helpful. And some people that I know, legislators, other people aren't expected to draw an opponent this year who will come knock doors. And so having those connections and getting the resources and information and in real time is been really valuable.
Okay. Now, how about the state party organization itself? Are you getting some, feedback in that regard from the
County,
state party?
just the county party so far. I think once filing happens in April, I think, the determination like then. So not heard a whole lot. I have, they've reached out, they've talked, where are you at, give some encouragement and advice. But as far as like really going behind a candidate, I think they're waiting to see should anyone else.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think Senator Hicks is on board from Oklahoma City. I think she's voiced her opinion that she supports Elizabeth Foreman so far. And we're looking forward to seeing more from our senators out of the Oklahoma City area. And it's not just our local legislators, but also the legislators in the counties around us, particularly Oklahoma County. The Democrats have really coalesced in a very positive way against Elizabeth, or not against, but with Elizabeth. So it's looking really good. We do have one additional question. Before we go there, one of the things that I wanted, and I don't know how to do this, and it's such a weird thing to even suggest. Toby Keith is very much Republican MAGA, but Toby Keith lives out east, and that turnpike is going to infringe very closely onto his property where he lives and where he's got his mansion out there. So I think he's got a vested interest in not allowing the turnpike to go out there close to where his property is either. So I'm just curious, and again, I'm not asking for a comment, but I'm just saying this out loud. I'm curious if he would support your campaign to prevent that turnpike from coming in.
I'm currently his council member. He has not had any interest in meeting me thus far.
Sure.
But I think as we continue and as we see, as the OTA moves forward with their impact studies and they come back because they can't have, bonds given to them and all of these things, thank goodness. I think as we move towards that, and honestly, the Republicans, they're going to go into a runoff. So I really
Sure.
don't know who my opponent is until August. But yeah, I think at that point, if the Republican candidate is not really coming hard against that, I do think that, he does have a vested interest.
Sure.
A lot of people, they want to protect their assets for their family and so on. And,
Mhm.
God bless him, he's had his health issues and he's talked about that publicly. And so I think that is something that is probably more of value to him now, right? That
Right.
he's so I mean, I'll be hopeful. I will definitely reach out to him, but as up until this point, any attempts have not been met.
Sure. So the biggest question of the day, and this is, the best opportunity for you to talk to your constituents. And do you have an inspiring message why the people of Cleveland County Senate District, dang it, I just drew a blank, Senate District 15, why the people should vote for you?
So I think one thing that makes me successful with people is that I'm not a very well polished politician. I really just, I'm very extemporaneous and, I'm one of them. I feel in this position, I'm not elevated by any stretch of the imagination. When I first won council, my daughter asked me, "Are you the boss of Norman now?" And I was like, "No, they're the boss of me." And that has always been my point of view and my perspective on this, and why I thought I would be good in an elected position, because I do hold that. And so many people who are elected do not hold those values. And so I can't say I'm the most inspiring person, but I am the most honest. And so, what I tell people, I'm not asking you to become a Democrat. You can stay a Republican. You can even check your little straight party voting if you want. But my name is going to be right here. And you know me and you've seen me. And this is what I can try to do for you, because this is what's happening to you right now. And it's not working for you. You don't have the opportunities to get ahead in life. The odds are being more and more stacked against you as time goes on for you to be able to overcome any of these things that are coming to you. People want to be a very one, item person, right? What, like, oh, I'm pro-life Republican, no matter what. Okay, well, that's important, and I understand, and I respect your values on that. But this is Oklahoma, so that's never going to change. So that's not a real concern. So apart from that, here are actual things you're concerned about that the people you want to vote for just because they're a Republican don't do for you. And here's what I could do for you. And just being very honest and direct about these differences. I don't think we as a party do very good jobs like highlighting, the very specific details, like, oh, your child's education is not that great, so they can't get into a good college, and tuition and why things aren't more affordable, et cetera. Education is lacking. Who's controlling the purse strings, right? It's Republicans. I'm not doing this for you. And so if I can just be anything, it's honest, and I'm not trying to sell anyone on some pipe dreams that aren't realistic. This is what is happening. This is what needs to be happening. And we're only going to get back to this. We're going to only get back to raising our numbers statistically within the nation. We're 51 in the nation for women. Okay.
Right.
Columbia is ahead of us. We are 51 overall. This is on the state of Oklahoma website. You can go look at the reports. These are things that are real time happening because the people you're electing are making bad policies for you. You have to start electing people who want to make better policies for you and not look at the party. You just have to look at the person, because when you just straight party vote, you'll elect anybody at that point because you're not looking at the candidate and what's really happening. So if you want someone who will actually work for you, who's not doing a vanity campaign and just trying to puff myself up, then I'm your person. It's as simple as that. It really is.
Goes back to what you were when you went to college in leadership. You want to be a servant leader.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That is wonderful. I really want to thank you for your time and being on Coffee with Democrats. You are truly a breath of fresh air for Norman, and trying to get us out from underneath of the shadow and out from underneath of the mushroom of the Standridge legacy. And his legacy is going to be a legacy that I don't think was going to last in Oklahoma, because it has been so detrimental to the people of Oklahoma. And we need to have somebody with your leadership skills and with your ability that can actually raise up the people of Oklahoma ahead of partisan politics. And that is such a very wonderful thing that we need to have here. So thank you for being on Coffee with Democrats. We really are grateful to you for taking the time out of your day to be with us. Do you have any other things that we need to talk about before we jump off here?
No, I'm long-winded at some things. I can talk all day, but just thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk about these things. I get kind of excited and I can kind of keep going and belaboring the point, but I'm just really passionate. So I would appreciate your vote, maybe on June 18th if I draw a primary. If not, then November 5th. Remember the 5th of November.
Very good. So I've gone ahead and made a small donation, and I would encourage anyone else, whether you live in this district or not, if you live in Oklahoma and you care about the makeup of the Oklahoma Senate, to make a contribution, show support, and get in touch with Kevin, because I'm sure he'll be leading the charge on doing some door knocking too.
I am going to share with everybody real quick. Here is the website for Elizabeth Foreman. And right there in the very front page, very beginning, it's got the donate key. I almost said donut. I must be getting hungry. Donate key. Right there. It's the blue button right front and center. We need to have everybody doing everything they can to support Elizabeth. And it starts with a very small donation. If you can give more than a very small donation, that's fine. But really, $5, $10, that it starts with the small contributions, and then from there it only grows. Just think of the rain. One raindrop coming down does not cause a flood. But when you get those millions and millions of small raindrops, you can actually create a flood. And that's what we need. We need to have a blue wave striking Senate District 15. All right, we'll stop sharing that and go back to Elizabeth. And again, thank you so much for being on Coffee with Democrats. We really have enjoyed this conversation, and we look forward to having more conversations with you in the future.